Hello everyone and welcome to my place on the internet, where I am your host, Peter aka the MuttonChopGuy, where I jump into the sprawling world of manga to talk about a very niche genre within it, known as gay Komi. And congratulations to me for figuring out a consistent opening for myself.
Nice.
So today I want to cover a very particular manga that is made by a very particular artist, because this is an artist who has some amazing qualities when it comes to their artwork. However, the themes that this artist really likes to cover are very hard and heavy, and sometimes goes on the very extreme end of things. But this is probably the best way to get into their work because, surprise, surprise, this person is actually able to make a manga that has no explicit content.
Wait, what?
And the story title is known as Coming Home by Go Fugimoto. And if you've never heard of Go Fugimoto before, well, I'm sure by the time you look into his works, you're going to be like, okay, I see what you're talking about. However, this is a very different type of story. I pretty much should just let it speak for itself. So let's get into this.
I say, let's do it!
This is a simple story in terms of plot, but it's the subject within it that carries the weight of the characters. With the original translation of the title being Coming Out, you can tell what kind of story we're going to read. The story basically revolves around our main character, Masashi Kajiyama, returning to his parents' home in the countryside and reveals to his parents about his sexuality, after being berated for being a single man approaching 30 years. Jump to a little over a year later, and we see Masashi at home, cooking dinner when his partner, Akira-san, returns home from work. Then Masashi receives some harsh news when he answers the phone. His mother informs him that his father has passed away. He returns to a series of challenging confrontations of his past interaction with his father, the prejudice against his sexuality, and the societal pressures of his friends and relatives in the area. Upon hitting the lowest point of endurance, Masashi goes to leave after an altercation he had with his aunt, only to find Akira-san there to attend the funeral. Learn that his own mother called Akira-san to attend. His aunt learning the reasoning of her sister making the attempt to trying to understand her son with having Akira-san attend, stemming from Masashi's father's wanting to do the same before he passed away. Masashi would discover the courage it took for his mother to make the first move, and the strength for Akira-san to accept the invitation, through their respective actions. Finishing the story with Masashi returning to the city with Akira-san after the funeral proceedings, writing a letter to his mother and waiting for her reply with the phone ringing at the last moment.
That can't be it. Where's the rest of it?
Something that's very common with many cultures, with Asian cultures more significantly than others, is fulfilling expectations of the family, which one comes to understand as legacy. Now, there are many layers of nuance when it comes to Asian cultures with things like marriage and family that would take me something along the lines of a multi-volume documentary equivalent to the whole collection of the Star Trek franchise to fully explain. But that's not what this story is trying to do. This story is more of a reflective commentary on these nuanced subjects within the culture at large, and in this case, it's the culture of Japan. Legacy can be similar to the concept of the American dream in the West in terms of value, but it just manifests differently. I'm not saying any of these are better or worse than any other culture regardless of Eastern or Western philosophies. Just want to make that clear. The commonalities that I was able to see is the growing up, getting a good paying job so you can meet someone to settle down with and start a family, which seems to be universal in many, if not all, cultures. The differences here is the reasoning behind the values they share. However, that is a whole video topic in its own right, so just keep that in mind.
Okay.
We see how certain characters bring up the usual talking points that always come up about sexuality, how it's portrayed in media, and how societal laws reflect their personal beliefs. Yet, at the same time, we see other characters making the necessary change in order to understand people they care deeply about, and growing out of their misguided judgments to be a family again. These are the same talking points that we see be discussed and debated with no end in sight, no matter how much actual progress we have made. Yet these points are what the story uses to progress the characters, with each giving the reader valuable lessons to take away from. Masashi, being the protagonist, brings us along his journey into accepting himself, starting with his coming out story. This is probably the oldest trope in the book with queer characters, but I also feel it's kinda important to have. It's akin to a rite of passage as we get older, by making the first step into accepting ourselves as what we are, and not being afraid of it anymore. I only wish more writers tried to get a bit more creative on how these tropes play out, as we all have different experiences with going through it, and so too should this trope. I can certainly see many useful ways to set up character motivations, be inciting instances to set the plot in motion, or develop a character in general. Either way, I think Fugimoto utilizes this trope as the base to characterize everyone in the story and sculpted each character's arc from it, which was paid off in the end. Musashi recollects the events of that night he came out to his parent, and seeing the reaction of both parents show you multiple layers of things that may be overlooked on your first reading of this story. But the smallest details become more pronounced the longer you keep looking at it. This was written to establish each character's stance between Musashi and his parents, and where those stances are derived from being the things that I pointed out earlier with the culture. There are subtle details, however, with Musashi's father during this altercation that shows more internal pain and struggle with how he's trembling after slamming his son, giving us something to note for later. Seeing how things get revealed in this story really lent to the weight of these themes explored here, and it just makes the circumstance of how these things played out hit even harder with the narrative punches. Musashi also gives a series of reality checks throughout the story that the reader should take a moment to empathize with if they really want to think about how he's feeling in these moments. Musashi's journey takes us along to show us the lessons that are probably cliches as well, being with how he leaves to start his life for himself, find someone that is different than what he's seen in his newfound life, and to resolve unfinished issues back home in order to gain closure in his life. His mother demonstrates the process of what some mothers go through when they have their children come out of the closet, which I can see where people come from as it being another cliche, but we see where it brings her to the conclusion to reconnect with her son, by including his partner in family affairs. It may seem trivial to some people, but it's majorly important here with how the culture is in Japan. She starts her journey by first being in denial, questioning Musashi's true intentions, then starts to question herself about her mothering abilities after learning the truth. When Musashi returns after a year, it appears that she projects her selfishness with questioning him on why he never returned. But it becomes clear at the end with the plans that she made with her deceased husband that she needed to follow through with her original plans by making that call her husband never made. Then seeing how she appears after learning about Musashi's letter is when we see her gain closure from her past. All of this growth stems from one person in this story, Musashi's father. His passing is what sets into motion his family coming together, healing the wounds that he caused that year prior. His remorse for his actions is the seed that sprouted the change in him, as cliche as that sounds. But let me explain how powerful this part really is. The major part that you should notice is the difference in how each parent reacts to Musashi when he comes out. With his mother only spoke her emotions out, with his father expressed through non-verbal actions such as throwing his drink at Musashi and slamming him into a wall. What tells me about the pain his father is feeling through the trembling as he spoke and the tear that looks like it's forming in his eye. It's when Musashi's mother tells her sister that we learn that his father desires to reconnect with his son, stating that flesh and blood is more important than personal beliefs and willing to change for it. This desire is crucial to the story as it motivated each character to resolve their grievances. A part that I think reveals the power of love is how even through death, one spouse gives another the strength that they need to persevere through their tribulations. His mother gaining her strength from the memory of her husband, Musashi having Akira-san arrive when he was fleeing, both reflect each other in that they needed the one person who they wanted to spend the rest of their life with to give them the motivation to follow through. It's a powerful message that people can and do change when they are given the chance. And we see it carry through to the end where Musashi wrote everything down in a letter to his mother. His thoughts and feelings on his father, Akira-san, himself, the past, and the future. Even though we never see the true resolution of whether or not Musashi invited his mother to stay with them in Tokyo, or if it was her that was calling in the final scene. I think the open-endedness lends to the power of this narrative. That even though a death of a loved one who caused us so much pain, they can show us the way to change and grow for the better, not only in ourselves, but the life we choose to lead for the people we love. You can definitely tell what era this story came from by the art style, which is something that you can pick up on by the telltale signs with mangaka. I'm not dismissing that, as I just know manga with how long I have been reading it. Go Fugimoto definitely developed their skills during the 90s, as I can see the same thick lines that Gogoro Tohame has in his works. That is something I just wanted to point out, as it helps understand the social climate the story originates from. However, Fugimoto definitely uses his style to sell the emotional components of the story with how he exemplifies the subtlety of the emotions of his characters. I love how you can read so much outside of the dialogue with how he mapped out the visuals within his work. The contrast of moods with the context of the situation magnifies the inner emotions of the characters that lets the reader really feel these things from the illustrations. There are moments that you find yourself lingering on how well he makes each scene punch, keeping your eye drawn to the focus of each panel. Using the borders of the pages to highlight certain chain of events also lends to the highs and lows roller coaster ride that this story goes through. And I feel like it was cleverly placed there to magnify the weight of the subjects expressed within the narrative. The way Fugimoto is able to make his characters express so much powerful emotion with the smallest amount of frames possible is nothing short of amazing. You can read what each character is thinking with each time you see their face, and can feel when those emotions feel uncontrollable with the angles he utilizes. The more somber moments give us a moment to breathe and reflect on the lessons from each scene, with every revelation reflected with each action every character makes. Overall, the art was brilliantly crafted and makes the story that much stronger with the heavy themes the author wanted to explore. There are some translator's notes I need to point out, as I think they did a really good job saving this story from the plot hole that they discovered from translating it. The original translation has it where the parents planned on calling the next day, which was the day the father passed, and questions why they wouldn't do so right away. I do agree, it doesn't make any sense, and changing it to where they decided to wait a few days to call helps make sense as to why they would do so. They wanted time to plan out what they wanted to do for the visit, which is disclosed in the story, and even including the part of what they were planning since the father had retired. This makes more sense if you take these parts into the equation, but I leave it to you to decide that. If you think the story left on a cliffhanger, well, you're not alone in thinking that, as the translators thought so too. But I do agree that how the story ends is already on a high note, and letting the reader fill in the blanks adds to the immersion of the story. I mean, this is technically an unrequited love type story, but instead of being a lover, it was a parent. Which that opens up ways to tell a story that you don't quite see every day, and you can be strongly moved by it in that fashion. Overall, this is a fantastic manga about a man who comes out to his parents and gains closure of his past through his father's passing that springs new life into a family over obstacles in society by not being afraid. And it all starts with that first step.
Hey, that's pretty good.
And that is it for my video. I certainly hope you guys enjoy what I had to say in this one. I know this one took me a while to do, but that's just because my job decided to go absolutely crazy during the summer season, because that is the nature of the job that I took up. So you guys pretty much understand where I'm coming from on that.
Interesting.
If you have any recommendations for me that has any of the tags of Bara, Gay Komi, or Men's Love, please do not hesitate to put that down in the comment section below, along with liking and subscribing to my channel, because it helps me out and it's absolutely for free. Please go ahead and do so. And if you feel like even helping me out even further, you do have the wonderful opportunity to donate to me at my Ko-Fi. As little as $1 is enough to show that you have enough support for me. Thank you.
Do it, 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 do it.
Also, I do want to let people know that yes, I'm still working on the next video that I want to put on my second channel. If you want to go check out what I did on as my first video on there, you can go check it up here in the corner, you know, the usual spots that it always pops up. Don't hesitate to go check that out. And yes, I am also working on my 1K special video, so guys, please stay tuned for that. I'm really excited about that one because it's something that I feel it's very different than what I'm usually doing. So please check that out when it comes out. Stay tuned. do all the usual shielding stuff, all that, you know, jazz. You guys been on YouTube long enough to know how this works, you know, like, come on. But other than that, I certainly hope you guys enjoy what I had to say in this one, and I hope to see you all in my next video. Bye-bye.